What about when the enemy appears to be on the team? I wanted to talk about Cypher a little bit this time because he stood out to me big time watching it through this who knows how many times rewatch this was for me. Yeah. But Cypher was the one that really stuck out to me this time. I was thinking of Acts 20 when Paul is leaving. I can't remember what city it was, and he says, wolves are going to arise among you, and you need to be on guard about that. There's all sorts of verses that speak to that. I think every other time I've watched this movie, I've thought of Cypher as he's the Judas character, right? He even shares a drink with Neo. He betrays the team, all these things. He seems to be one of the followers, and yet he's not. And there is something to be said for that. But just thinking about his character in terms of, a big word, apostasy, that we don't throw around that much. But he's a person who, he counted the initial cost. He was a part of this team, but he, now getting a more of a picture of it, he has big time regret about it. To him, believing the lie would be more attractive than knowing this truth. At this point in his life, he's realizing the steak tastes really good. As long as I just don't know it's not truly steak, it's pretty good. He's literally the person that wants to do Romans 1 and exchange the truth for a lie in this movie. That's what he wants to do. He's very much like Proverbs 26 talks about the dog that returns to its own vomit. He wants to go back to that life that he had before. He wants to return to that way of being. And you think about too, and this is why apostasy was coming into my mind. Think about that parable of the sower and the soils that were not great, like that they were not going to have a lasting result. What were some of the things that were said about those soil? It says they gladly receive it at first, but fall away at trouble. That's Cypher. He was very excited to know the truth, I bet. I mean, I don't know. I feel like he's a part of it, so there probably was a point at which that was interesting to him, but when the trouble comes, he falls away. Or another form of soil, and I forget which ones were which, but another form of the soil cared more for riches and the world than they did
or steak. Oh, wait.
Yeah, absolutely. So his character was just really, really stood out to me this time, and I think it's something that we don't talk about or think about that much, but there are actual biblical warnings. I mean, we can debate theologically, was Cypher ever on the team truly? Because in his heart, he was never with them. It doesn't seem like he was ever all in the way the other people were in, and we could have our little theological debate, well, he was never a part of them, or he was, and he fell away from being a part of them. At the end of the day, I don't super care about that in this conversation, but it gave me a chance to go back and review Hebrews, where it talks about the reality of apostasy. It gave me a chance to go back to 2 Peter 1 and see where Peter's saying, hey, make your calling and election sure. And that's not to say that God's purposes can be thwarted, but there is this reality, like, you don't know God's purposes, and those warnings are there for a reason. Like, and watching this time, I was just like, man, don't be Cypher. Don't be that guy. That's awful.
First name Lou. No, you think about Judas. I mean, Jesus chose him, right? Like, Jesus said, follow, like, yeah. I mean, Judas was chosen, but we also see his purpose, destiny, etc. I mean, he did not endure to the end. So, I mean, like, there is a way in which God works. I mean, and we call that I just used the term, we had a baptism on Sunday, and we received someone into the membership of the visible church. It's like, well, we got a visible church. We got all the people who claim the team, and actually they at least can articulate and have a knowledge of the truth. I mean, even in our scripture, it says the demons believe and shudder. Like, there are people who are actually enemy who have that knowledge. They're spiritual enemies. They have the knowledge of the truth. So, like, what they're playing with Cypher, because he's sort of like a shorthand for Lucifer, but he's kind of the Judas. They're playing with a lot of betrayer characters, archetypes, I guess, if you will. But I think it works for those Christians too. Like, there are people who claim to be on the team and seem to see everything that we do, and maybe some of them even articulate it better than we do. Maybe they even write songs about it, and guest on the podcast, and then they have another way.
And I'm glad you said that, because I want to make a comparison here between Cypher and Derek. As terrible as this is, And
this is going to be good.
I know it's going to be good, but listening to not his newest album now, because again, go listen to that. It's pretty cool. But his one before that, which I liked a lot, but is super depressing because it's his Fingers Crossed is his Apostasy album. But he talks in there about things like maybe you're not real, or maybe I'm just not chosen. Now remember, Derek Webb was a Kool-Aid drinking Calvinist, if ever there was one, and so he's seeing that in
Kool-Aid.
terms of that's how he was. So he understands the ideas of election and those things that a Calvinist might want to talk about. And that would be the view he even told us on the podcast. That's the view he would hold if he were still a Christian. He thinks that is the most consistent. So where that led him was, maybe I'm just not chosen. Maybe you are real, but if I'm not chosen, what can I do about it? And so he kind of took his theology to this dark sort of place where it's not a helpful truth to hold at that point, or not to hold it in that way. But you get, plug me back in. But you get that with Cypher. Hey, if what you believe is true, I can't do this, right? There's no way I can kill this man. And so you see him tempting God in the same sorts of ways, that like he's making a mockery of the thing that he would have professed to, at least on some terms, agree with, at least at face value, if he were talking to Morpheus before. And now he's making a mockery of it. It's interesting. They both have bald heads. They both. I don't know. I saw comparisons.
Wait a minute. Don't be ripping on bald heads.
It would take some sort of miracle.